Hey everyone, David Lee here, Texas Horns football. It's time for 2019 season predictions. We're going to go game by game, down the schedule, look at each game. Not going to give a score prediction for each game, but going to give an outcome prediction, and then also just kind of look at the schedule overall as a whole of what stands out to me. So we're going to dive in pretty deep, but definitely leave your predictions in the comments below. If you want to skip ahead or around to a certain game, I'll leave timestamps in the description, so be sure to check the description. Definitely give the video a like, share it out, let us know what you think, what your predictions are, and don't forget to subscribe. All right, so let's jump into it. We're going to go game by game and not going to give a score prediction, but going to give a prediction of how the game turns out. But we'll definitely look at each game individually. First, though, I wanted to just kind of look at the schedule as a whole and just kind of give some thoughts. You know, one thing that stands out to me is that I really think this is a top-heavy schedule. So the first half, you've got to go through, you got games against LSU, Oklahoma, arguably two top 5 teams, both happening before mid-October. So as you just kind of glance at this schedule, like I said, I think it's very top-heavy. So in one sense, that's good for injuries. If you had a lot of your big games against some of the better teams later in the season, you're kind of rolling the dice a little bit that everybody's going to stay healthy. Last year, I think the team overall was incredibly healthy. Keontae Ingram got banged up a little bit. The offensive line, I think, stayed really healthy. So that, I think, is a positive. I would rather see the tougher games be early. But, like with anything, that can turn out, who knows how that actually is going to turn out. And the other thing that stood out to me was 10 games in the state of Texas. So that's pretty cool, and it cuts down, I think, on the time that the team needs to spend on travel. So does that mean there is extra time, extra prep time, a little bit extra practice time, studying time? Likely, but if you just kind of glance at it, even against Rice, that's in Houston, that's about 2.5 hours away, and then obviously Oklahoma in Dallas, and then TCU in Fort Worth, and then you've got Baylor driving up the street to Waco. So again, 10 games in Texas, that's kind of cool to see. And that's also 7 of the first 8 games are in Texas. So, I think that also stands out to me as a little bit of an advantage, just kind of looking at the schedule in a little bit different way. And also the 3 of the first 4 games are in Austin. So we've got Austin, Houston, and then back in Austin. So I think, that's also kind of cool. And then kind of depending on what happens with that LSU game, we'll talk about that. And then the last thing kind of overall is, remember, the Big 12 has 4 new coaches, Kansas, Kansas State, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. So going to be cool to see what those coaches bring. Obviously, these guys are not really their guys yet, but that's going to be a different dynamic in the Big 12. So, all right, let's get started. Week 1, and again, if you want to skip ahead any weeks, I'll leave a timestamp in the description, and then don't forget to leave your comments on how you see some of these games turning out. So, obviously, Week 1, Louisiana Tech. The number one thing that stands out to me is that, every Longhorns fan in the world is only talking about LSU. I'm almost glad that Terry Bradshaw kind of said what he said about Sam Ehlinger and Texas and how, these schools, he actually didn't even make any sense when he was blabbing, but, he likes to talk. He's kind of a cartoon of himself. Basically, he just said that Sam Ehlinger ain't that good anyway, and that he would rather have their guy. So whatever. But, maybe that gives fans, staff, players some extra attention to not look past LSU. That's what scares me about Louisiana Tech, that they're going to look past to LSU. And because both of those games are in Austin, they're not having to travel or anything. So it's one of those things where you just hope that they're not just wanting to get Louisiana Tech out of the way so that they can get to LSU. Louisiana Tech is not a bad team. Do predict, obviously, a win. I wouldn't be surprised if the offense takes a little bit of time to kind of get their sea legs under them, get the timing down, figuring out what to do without LJ Humphrey. But that's kind of what I might see as a downfall of this game. But definitely expect them to pull ahead of Louisiana Tech, pretty quickly, and just put the game away. That's what I would love to see. I would love to see long drives that Texas can pass and run and really just kind of do whatever they want to do to put them away and not have to maybe show LSU some maybe hidden things that they're maybe holding back for LSU. The defense, that's the big question mark, especially at linebacker. I totally expect the defensive backs to show up against Louisiana Tech. So win there, and then moving on to LSU. LSU, obviously a great team. They went 10-3 last year. They beat Central Florida in the Fiesta Bowl. And, obviously if you've been paying attention to college football the past 2 years, Central Florida was on a 2-year winning streak, okay? They were arguing that they should have a shot at the national championship or at least the playoff. I believe they beat Auburn the year before, but LSU did beat them. So LSU went 10-3, lost to Alabama, lost in just like an infinite amount of overtimes to A&M. That game was like insane, 76-70. But LSU, obviously a fantastic team. They're good on offense. They're good on defense. They have receivers. They can move the ball. They're tough. Going to be a super tough game. The biggest thing that concerns me is that it's week 2. That's the main reason I'm projecting a loss here. Not saying that Texas can't win. It just feels like a really bad time to me. If this game were 2 or 3 weeks later, I might go with a win. I just think that LSU is much more prepared all around to come into Austin and win this game. I see it being a close game. I see it being a somewhat low-scoring game. Maybe the winner scores in the high 20s. Maybe 28-20, something like that. I see Texas needing a little bit of time to figure out how to defend a team like LSU. Because you really can't just take one thing away that they do well and expect to just kind of, roll them over. Definitely would love to see a win here. Obviously, would be fantastic. But I just think because of the timing of this game and knowing what LSU is returning on their roster and what they did last year, I just think they're more prepared right now for this game than Texas is. But more than anybody, I hope I'm wrong. And definitely let me know what your comments are about that game. And then the very next week, September 14th against Rice in Houston. Obviously got to win that one. You can't lose against Rice. And no matter what happens in the LSU game, I really hope this is just an absolute rout, to get the starters a little bit of rest, but more importantly, to get some of the other guys in there. I want to see more of Whittington and Jake Smith, and I want to see some Malcolm Epps and some of these other young, true freshman defensive backs. So that's something that I'm going to be looking for in the Rice game in the second half. I hope that it's not a game by halftime. So let's make it not a game by halftime. Let's see what these young guys can do and give them a chance to show that they deserve some playing time in the coming weeks. And then next, Oklahoma State on the 21st. I think the big story with this game
is Oklahoma State, 4 wins in a row. The Pokies have won the last 4, and they've also Texas is also 1-5 against them in the last 6. So Texas has only won 1 of the last 6 against the Pokies. No matter what, if it's in Stillwater, if it's in Austin, Oklahoma State just always plays Texas well. They did it when Vince Young was the quarterback, when Cedric Benson was the running back. It goes back, 10 to 15 years, I think. But projecting a win here, finally, Oklahoma State loses, Justice Hill at running back. I think that's going to be a big loss for them. And I just see Oklahoma State in a kind of retooling year, rebuilding. And I think this is a good time for them to come in Austin to get their butts whooped, rightly so, and get that record back on track. So, definitely projecting a win here. I have no reason to think that this wouldn't be another close game. It almost always is with Oklahoma State for some reason. The week after is a bye, so there's no Texas Longhorns football the week after, so we'll all have a good cry there. But hopefully that they can come out of here with a win and head into that bye week and be 1-0 in the conference. But definitely projecting win against Oklahoma State. I really think this is a game where Sam really starts to shine and really starts to find an awesome rhythm with the offense. And hopefully by then, after week 4, we'll kind of know, how the running back situation is going to go with Keontae Ingram leading the group. How are they going to fit Jordan Whittington in there? And then what other little wrinkles and creative things are they going to do with some of these new guys? So hopefully we'll see that by then, heading into that bye week. All right, then October 5th, West Virginia, throwing out a win for that one. They lose a lot in Will Greer, Stills, the receiver, so a lot of loss for West Virginia. They also have a new head coach, but no one wants to go to West Virginia and play. It's a tough place to play. I've never been to see a game there, but I hear the travel sucks. I hear it's just a tough place to play. So, I think this game might be close early, but Texas definitely needs to take care of West Virginia, where they did not take care of Oklahoma State and West Virginia last year. Those were back-to-back losses, and then we get those two teams again back-to-back this year. So definitely expect a win. They beat them last time they were in West Virginia. Remember that was the game where Will Greer broke his finger heading into the end zone and fumbled the ball into the end zone for a touchback. So I'll never forget that. But he's gone, so they're kind of rebuilding as well. So definitely 4-1 heading into the big game against Oklahoma. I think would be a pretty good scenario. 5-1, I would be, I think that is more than you could ask for. If you run through that first 5 games undefeated, I'm projecting another win against Oklahoma, just for the sheer idea that I think by this time Texas is just gonna have to buckle down and just be on a mission. They're gonna have to obviously show that they're crisp and that they're ready to beat Oklahoma by more than just a field goal at the end of the game. I really hope we don't see another trade-off. Obviously, the biggest story with this game, I think, is Jalen Hurts taking over for Kyler Murray and an offense that has had 2 back-to-back Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. Now, Texas played Baker Mayfield tight and tough. They obviously beat Kyler Murray in Oklahoma last year in this game, and then lost to him in the Big 12 championship. But I'm projecting a win here. Going 3-0 in the Big 12, that's going to put them in a fantastic spot. And, Texas hasn't beaten Oklahoma back-to-back in 10 years. you got to go back to 08-09, Colt McCoy's junior and senior years for the last back-to-back win against Oklahoma. So I think they get it done this time. I think things from here start to really take a national stage, and the perfect time to take control and be the team to beat in the Big 12. Next week against Kansas, obviously last year a 7-point win against Kansas to end the season, but I do think there was some end of the year kind of let's just get it over with. Let's go into Kansas and just come out with a win. But really kind of slow and sloppy last year. Probably looking to toward the Big 12 championship game. But Kansas comes into Austin. Definitely think this is a win, especially if they beat Oklahoma. I think you beat Oklahoma, you come in and just absolutely trounce Kansas. And hopefully it's a lot different than what we saw last year with just a 7-point win and a pretty tight game that I think included I think that was the punt return for a touchdown if I remember right. And then next week against TCU in Fort Worth, this game scares me. Gary Patterson's not down for long. Okay, they've had some behavior issues and some weird kicking people off the team issues the past couple years, but you can never put anything past Gary Patterson. Definitely wouldn't be surprised if this was a tight game. This one's tough for me to call because if things shake out the way I'm thinking that they will, they've got 5 wins in a row. They would be 4-0 in the conference, and this I think would be a really tough game to go up there in Fort Worth and beat TCU. At least to beat them in a way that you really just handle them. Last year, I really think this is where Texas kind of found their groove when they beat TCU. They just seem to really, really have their way with them on offense and defense. I just don't see that happening again this year. I am projecting that they go up there and win. And obviously use a little horny toad logo there for this one. But like I said, Gary Patterson scares me. He's a great coach. I've stood around him at some media events and just listened to him, and just really, really like his approach to the game as a manager and as just someone who is just a leader of these guys. So next game, Kansas State. I think most people projected that they would finish last or next to last in the Big 12. They come into Austin. For some reason, Kansas State's another one of those teams that somehow just always plays Texas well. But they've got a new coach, new head coach, Chris Kleiman, by the way. And if that name sounds familiar, Chris Kleiman was the head coach at North Dakota State during their national championship runs, and I think he was the defensive coordinator for North Dakota State before then. But he comes in, I think this year, though, he's got a lot of rebuilding to do. So definitely see this as a win, especially because it is in Austin against Kansas State. I just don't think Kansas State is going to bring enough to the table to overcome a team as talented as Texas. So if that happens, you're looking at 6-0 in the conference, 7 wins in a row, and obviously in the driver's seat of the conference. And honestly, that's kind of tough for me to see, not because I don't think Texas is capable of doing it. It's just hard to do. It's hard to, beat teams that are good, not great, like TCU, and just hard to string together that many wins, especially in the conference, and to stay healthy and all this. But next game, going up to Iowa State, this is the game that is my, call it a trap game, but Iowa State's obviously a really good football team. This is the game where I see Texas drops their one conference loss going into Iowa State. If this game was in Austin, I would pretty comfortably pick Texas. But Iowa State always plays Texas well in Ames for some reason. I think they lose a lot in running back David Montgomery going to the NFL, and then Hakeem Nicks going to the Cardinals receiver. But they got their quarterback back, and again, I just think that stringing together that many wins in a row in the conference, this is the game that's most likely going to be a loss. Again, not saying that Texas can't go in there and do it and handle business and stay, number one. And even if they lose to Iowa State, that doesn't mean that they lose their number one spot in the conference. However, I do predict, like most everybody else, Texas, Oklahoma, and Iowa State as the top three teams in the conference. So this loss could potentially create a three-way tie, just like it almost did last year, but Iowa State did us a favor and got us a couple extra losses in there. So, wouldn't be surprised if we saw them again in the Big 12 championship game. I'll give my kind of quick prediction on that here in a minute. But gonna go with this is the loss. This is the one Big 12 loss. Also, maybe because Texas maybe is a little banged up at this point, and going into Ames is never easy. Next week against Baylor, driving up the street to Waco a little ways. Obviously, what Baylor brings to the table, Charlie Brewer, quarterback, is kind of their main concern. I think if Texas can shut him down, get some constant pressure on him, and just beat him, just hit him, beat him, make him scared back there, that this one turns into a win, moving the record to 9-2. So, I think I fully expect Baylor to be better this year than they were last year. If you remember, Sam Ehlinger pretty much missed this entire game, and Shane Buechele had to come in and did a great job at quarterback. And that's another thing that scares me, with this November schedule. One of these games, is it TCU, is it K-State, is it Iowa State, Baylor? The way Sam plays, I would be blown away if he was fully healthy for all the snaps. Now, I do expect to see a little bit of redshirt freshman backup Casey Thompson, just to kind of throw in some wrinkles there. I think you can throw in Casey Thompson and let him run, mix it up with Ingram and Whittington, but maybe we need to see a little Casey Thompson against Iowa State or Baylor to keep Sam healthy. He pretty much missed half of the Iowa State game last year and pretty much all of the Baylor game last year. So, but still was able to produce like he did. But definitely see this one as a win. And then last game of the season, Texas Tech. I'm glad it's not in Lubbock. I'm always more comfortable with Texas Tech in Austin, but definitely I think I like Texas Tech being the last game because it's a rivalry, nowhere near Oklahoma or, what we had with the little Aggies, but at least it's not Kansas, at least it's not Kansas State to where you're really going to overlook this last game. I do think by this time we will have a really good, strong knowledge of who's going to be in the Big 12 championship game. And then Texas, I fully expect them to be holding on strong to that 1 or 2 spot. And then having a rival like Texas Tech come into Austin, you have a senior day. It's the last game of the season. You get to finish it out at home against a rival. I fully expect the game to be at night, right after Thanksgiving, holiday time. Beat them, take care of them, go to 10-2, head into the Big 12 championship game. So that's my full kind of record. And obviously you can't look past Texas Tech. It was a close game last year, but that game was in Lubbock. That always scares me. I would so much rather play Texas Tech in Austin. That's what we get this year. So overall, a pretty favorable schedule by how some of these weeks lay out. But that's my prediction, 10-2, going 1 win better than last year, finishing at 9-3, and then obviously the bowl win against the Sugar Bowl and the loss against Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game last year. My prediction for the Big 12 championship game is Texas and Iowa State. I think Oklahoma, with the loss against Texas, I fully see them losing at least one more game, possibly to Iowa State or Oklahoma State. Now, the big question with them, I think, is Jalen Hurts and how he's going to fit in, how they're going to use him, and at what point does Jalen Hurts really hit a stride in this Oklahoma offense with CeeDee Lamb and Oklahoma's two good running backs? How does that work? So, that's kind of what I see. I don't think Jalen Hurts is an easy answer like a lot of other people are talking about to just plug him into the Oklahoma offense. So my prediction, Texas, Iowa State. Texas loses 2 games in the regular season, just one Big 12 loss to Iowa State. They get a rematch in Arlington and beat Iowa State to win the Big 12 championship game. Not going to predict playoff or bowl or anything right now, but just regular season. That's kind of how I see it shaking out. 10-2, and then Texas beating Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game to just keep improving over last year. This is the time, if they go 9-3, I wouldn't be disappointed, but that's about that's about it. They need to minimum 9-3, 10-2. I think would be obviously better progress. Would be absolutely stoked if they went 11-1. So those are my predictions, guys. Throw yours down in the comments. Let us know if you want to talk about any specific game. How do you see it shaking out? What are you most concerned about with this schedule? What are you most confident about with the schedule? If you do have a loss or 2 or 3, who do you see Texas losing to? And then let me know what you think about these predictions. But those are my official schedule game win predictions for 2019. So anyway, it was fun. Don't forget to subscribe, give it a like, share it out. Follow us on the Facebook page, Texas Horns Football. We have over 50,000 Longhorns fans on the page, so come chat with us. We update it, at least try to update it 2 or 3 times a day, and keep up to date with news up there. So we'll see you on there, and we'll see you on the next video. Hook 'em.